Tampa, St. Petersburg, Sarasota.
It used to be that during recessions, Florida was one of the last states in and one of the first states out. Recessions were not only shorter here, but they were milder. That was then, this is now. Since 2007, Florida and the Tampa Bay region have been among the hardest hit by the Great Recession, and few industries have declined as much as real estate. There's been a major shakeout in real estate construction, brokerage, and finance. But for those who are well positioned, there are new opportunities. You're about to meet a commercial real estate CEO who believes it's time to say, game on. Next on the Suncoast Business Forum. Growth creates opportunities. It also brings competition. For nearly 40 years, a Clearwater commercial real estate firm has capitalized on the growth and gone head-to-head with the competition. In 1974, Lee Arnold was just a few years out of college when he established Lee Arnold Associates, and he built a solid organization over the next several decades. Following a merger, he now heads up Central and Southwest Florida operations for Colliers International, one of the biggest commercial real estate firms in the world. Lee, welcome to the Suncoast Business Forum.
Thank you, Jeff. It's good to be with you.
Now, Florida historically has had booms and busts, but this one seems to be quite a bit different. How would you evaluate this one compared to the others you've seen over the decades you've been in the business?
The one you're in is always the worst. However, we call this the Great Recession. My view is the 75 years of capital markets that we enjoyed through the years of 2000 disintegrated overnight. The reconstituting of that has become very difficult in Florida.
Now, in your opinion, what does it take to move this situation forward from where we are now? You know, the difficult times that people are having in real estate, the decline in values. What does it take to reignite the real estate sector?
Well, the first thing is always out of everyone's mouth is jobs. We have to have jobs. We have to retrain our workforce, and more important in the real estate industry is we're seeing a resetting of values. The values have gone down, now the balance sheets have reset, and there's new buyers acquiring property. Entrepreneurs are all over the state of Florida looking for opportunities.
Where are the entrepreneurs coming from? Where do you see the capital coming from?
Well, there's local capital, which is very prevalent, but there's also foreign capital. Many of our transactions in apartments, healthcare, are foreign dollars coming both from South America and also from Europe and Canada. The problem is looking at the stupid financing that we did in the past, and that isn't available. The money's much smarter today.
How do you think that will play out as a result of the fact that, one, you say money is smarter today? What's that going to do to the nature of the commercial real estate market 5-10 years from now?
It'll require real equity at the time you finance the transaction, as opposed to inflated values and no equity and cash flows that are very, very marginal. Now you're going to have reasonably good cash flows.
Your perspective on this market goes way back not only to the time you set up your business in the 70s, but you actually grew up in the Tampa Bay area back in the 1950s. Give us your perspective on the changes you've seen over that period of time.
Well, it's quite amazing. Starting on Madeira Beach back in the 1950s, we would have lived in a 1,000 square foot or less home. It would be very enjoyable, very simple lifestyle. The beaches were very beautiful. However, it was very rustic. When we talked about water, we talked about well water and lemon in the well water that we grew on the trees. And the roads were unpaved in the Seminole area. Even parts of Madeira Beach were still sand roads, and that's in the mid-50s to early 60s. Dumie Road, I rode to school, it was a dirt road, and now you can see it's a 4-lane highway with all kinds of condominiums on all sides of it. So it's a very different time, lots of orange groves, very agrarian.
Tell us about your family, about your siblings, about their involvement in the community, the values of your parents.
Well, we grew up in Seminole, and my father was a chiropractor on Seminole Boulevard, and for years and years he was part of the fabric of the community, the president of the Rotary Club, and in general the man about town. And he was quite quite a personality in the Seminole, which is a fairly small town. Even today, it's not a huge town, and we had a great life in that area. It was a lot of fun.
What were you like when you were a kid? Were you involved in sports? Were you a great student? What were you like?
Great student would be a big exaggeration. An average student would be closer. All the athletics, from tennis to basketball to football, as many people of that period would be multi-lettered students.
Now, when you were a teenager, you took up flying. What drew you to flying?
Always interested in flying, but my dad had a rule. He would only pay for education. He wouldn't pay for anything else, and I figured that was a way to, kind of get back at Dad for sending me to military school. But the end result, it was a very good way to learn, to understand that I could learn. And he was very smart in that respect. He funded that and helped me get into aviation at a very young age, 15.
Now, you got involved in aviation, as you said, when you were 15, very young, but you weren't only a pilot, you were an instructor. You learned how to not only fly, but you were teaching people as a teenager.
In high school at 16, I got my private, and then when I turned 18, on or about that 18th birthday in January, I got my commercial, and a few weeks later, I got my flight instructor ticket. And back then, I had very few hours, but they had a new program called Fly the Cessna, or Learn to Fly program, Cessna sponsored, and I would take anybody that wanted to go up for a free demo ride up and teach them a little bit about flying. And pretty soon my book of business was full because none of the senior instructors wanted to offer free flights. And they couldn't figure out how I got all these students. Well, I'd take up anybody that wanted to fly, and it worked out pretty good. It was a very interesting transition from no time to building time.
What is it about flying that has such an appeal to you?
Good question. And people ask you that all the time, and part of it in the beginning was the prestige of being able to fly, and then it really became much more understanding the complexities of the aircraft, and learning to teach was really when I learned to fly. You don't really understand a subject until you have to teach it, and if you are successful at teaching it, then you've studied it, and you're a better student, and you become an even more focused student in the future.
After graduating from Seminole High School, you went to college at the University of South Florida.
Go Bulls.
Did you have any idea what you were going to study, what you wanted to be when you get out?
I did not. I had fully intended to be a commercial pilot, flying airlines, flying charter, which I was already flying charter by the time I got to USF, and I was still flight instructing. Finance was the background that my dad recommended, and so I went with a finance degree as my focus. It gave me the flexibility to go in a number of different directions.
Now, at the time you were at USF, you also enrolled in the National Guard. Is that right?
I did. I was fortunate to get in the National Guard. I had a low draft number. I was going to be over flying helicopters or small aircraft.
Now, while you were in the Guard, you actually got injured, which had a pretty profound impact on your
That's
life.
one of those life changers. We were in an accident on active duty, and that resulted in a disabled veteran status, which doesn't go well in the airlines. So I was pretty much out of aviation, and I'm very thankful to USF. It's one of my commitments. They helped me through a very difficult year, coming off those injuries, get through the year, and I owe it to USF for that help during that difficult time.
So after your injury, you went back to USF, graduated from USF, and headed into the job market. Where did you land?
I actually landed at something called Sunshine Mall, and I was a property manager, leasing agent. That led me to meet my current father-in-law, Herbert G. Brown, who many people know is the president of Rotary International worldwide, and also the individual who was the person behind Checkers double drive-through restaurants. And he's quite a mentor. He's been a very, very important part of my life for many years.
Well, tell us about Herb Brown.
Well, if you meet him, you'll meet a person who is as genuine and as personable and as caring as any person you've ever met in your life. And he's a teacher. You cannot be around Herb Brown and not come out better.
Mm-hmm. Now, you worked for Herb Brown, am I right?
I did.
What was your first job working for Herb?
Well, Herb said, go build these Ponderosa steakhouses. And I said, I don't know anything about building Ponderosa steakhouses. He says, I think you do. And I went out, and we had 8 Ponderosas in the Tampa Bay market, and we built them. And that was actually the first responsibility. And he said, you go to school when you have to, do what you have to. Here's a credit card for the gas. Go build these. And that was my introduction to net leasing and build-to-suits.
Now, Herb Brown was not only your boss, you actually met Herb's daughter, and she became your wife. Tell us about it.
Well, 37 years ago we got married, and we're still married, and we have 2 beautiful children, now 2 beautiful grandchildren, and it's a wonderful family to be part of. They're Cajun, so you know there's a connect with Cajuns and their family, and it's been a lifelong pleasure to be in that family.
Well, it wasn't very long after you graduated from school, got involved with commercial real estate leasing, developed some ponderosas, that you actually started your own firm. You started Lee Arnold Associates, I think it was 1974.
Yeah.
What led you to go out and do that on your own, fresh out of college and just early in the business?
Well, part of it is I didn't want to work for the bosses. You know, my wife, the boss's daughter type of relationship, and the ego in me said I've got to go do my own thing. And Herb encouraged that, but he also said you got to finish these ponderosas. So one thing led to another, and if you know Herb Brown, and we've had many, many, many good investments and fun through business, you never really leave Herb Brown. You know, he's always there, and he's always been an important part, as has his wife, Dion Brown. And, of course, my wife has been a big support part of that. That's the way that family works. They all work together. And now my brother-in-laws and Jared Brown, and it's a close-knit family.
So when you started Lee Arnold Associates, how did you distinguish yourself, and how did you grow the business? What was going on at this time in the commercial real estate business?
Well, in Pinellas County, there was no standalone commercial investment real estate firm. They were all hybrids of residential doing a little commercial on the side. Real hardcore commercial real estate, everyone said there wasn't enough activity to make a living. And I said, well, I'm going to try it. I'm going to try to be a standalone commercial real estate firm. And if I could just have a little piece of the business in Clearwater, I was a happy camper. And that's where focus began. And because it was right in 1974 when the oil crisis hit, overnight I learned that I had to be a problem-solving broker. And I listed a whole bunch of land. And as you said in your opening, these recessions would occur, and then something would happen, they would correct themselves, and you would be out of it a lot quicker than you would ever imagine at the depths of that recession. It's always the worst recession. 74 had to be the worst recession. But once the oil crisis was fixed, if you will, the embargo, then the markets came back pretty fast, and we had listed a whole lot of property, and the real estate boom had started again, and we saw land move, and that's really where I got the most thrust, is in that early 70s period. There was a lot of business activity. Countryside didn't exist as we know it today. They had signs going up, it's coming, and it was called, you know, Countryside. It was quite a different time. Lots of land. Starkey Road was cows and horses, and we sold those for mobile home parks and commerce parks, and it was an interesting time.
So you learned real estate on the run, and you probably had to learn how to manage people at the same time.
Hardest part of the real estate business is the people, you know, working with personalities. But today I have several associates that have been with me more than 30 years. We're in the original offices back in Missouri Avenue, and before we moved to downtown Clearwater, and now we're out on 19 with headquarters and offices throughout the state. It's a different time.
Do you think being a problem solver, being a strategist, is something that's value added that you bring to the table compared to competitors?
I think the firm brings it. I think I'm one of many that try to solve problems. Today it is about solving problems, addressing the issues before you. We talked about financing, helping bring that financing package together, understanding the risk. That's solving problems today.
Now, when you had Lee Arnold Associates up and running, you also got involved in a number of other non-real estate ventures. Tell us about some of the other ventures you've gotten involved in.
Well, some of those would be adventures. You know, the software business turned out to be a precursor to a passion for life, and when the PC came out, I was enamored with the idea of organizing the commercial real estate industry, and we started a product called RealBase that for 10 years we promoted across the nation, automated 400 real estate firms, commercial real estate firms. It was the product of the CCIM program. And then we sold that to New America Network, which is now NAI. Good day, it's like a boat. The day you get out of the software business was a good day. And so I learned some things in that. But we've been in a lot of other businesses. Brown's Furniture, you've heard of. Remember the big Brown's Furniture operations we had on the West Coast and into Louisiana. Those were fun. I've been in the watermelon business, the cattle business, those kinds of things over the years. And our largest development is Meadow Point, north of Tampa, Wesley Chapel Lakes, 4 miles long, 1.5 miles wide. And from 1999 to 2006-07, over 2,000 home sites sold.
What is it about you that draws you to the entrepreneurial ventures, and not only just in real estate?
Well, entrepreneurs, if that term is defined, is someone who enjoys starting businesses and taking risk. Those are the two components of an entrepreneur, as I understand it. I enjoy starting businesses. I'm probably not as good an operator as I might be as an entrepreneur, working out the business plan, the vision, the capitalization, those kinds of things. Probably better at that than operating. But we all have to be operators in today's world. There are fewer vice presidents, and so everyone's an operator today.
Now, you've always been attracted to technology. What is it that draws you to technology?
It is a competitive advantage, bottom line. If you accept that there is so much change in the world, especially if you look at the last 18 months, never before have we seen the radical changes in the way we do business that we've seen. And you could say, well, it's the iPad, the iPhone, but it's beyond that. The entire back end of the cloud has been forming for maybe 5 years, and now we can have the benefit of huge computing power on a slate at our fingertips, and some of the applications just absolutely blow me away, and I think that's a competitive advantage to others who cannot move quickly. And so our folks are learning how to apply the new technology in a new way to solving problems for specific clients.
In 1996, you merged Arnold Associates with Colliers International and created a very big operation here in the state of Florida. What led you to that merger at that point, and what advantages have you achieved from that merger?
The only major global firm that did not have penetration in the Florida markets was Colliers International. We looked out at the landscape and said it's going global. And while 1995 seems like a long time ago, we became part of that group in 1996. It was a great move. It gave us access to capital and people, but we still have the individual autonomy in our markets to be nimble and use the resources of what is now a public corporation called First Service out of Toronto. It's a remarkable combination of entrepreneurial spirit because the offices in the local, regional, super-regional markets are operated by people like myself who have direct connect with the community, and that makes a big difference on the local sense. But we also now have these relationships in China and Asia, all over Asia. So if a client asks, and that happened just recently, it's very easy to make a connect anywhere in a major Tier 1 city in the world.
Are we seeing a lot of foreign involvement, foreign engagement in this marketplace now?
Considerable amount. When you worry about the crash of Europe, and the downfall of the euro, where would money go today for safe haven? It's going to the United States. And we are seeing that money. What are treasuries doing? You're in the business. Treasuries, they keep going down. You say, well, how's that possible? And we're seeing that people want to own real estate because they can go kick it at the end of the day, find it, hold it, touch it. And that's a plus, a big plus for foreign capital.
Now, you recently have gotten involved in some web-based businesses. You're also involved in banking. This is really a diversion from where you were. Even though you're involved in entrepreneurial ventures before, this is a whole new thing.
Well, actually, both of those are, I've been in several spectacular flameouts in the angel rounds, early capital investing rounds. But this particular venture is with Kurt Long and is fairwarningaudit.com, a fabulous entrepreneur. He is so on. And this is one of these where we have not had to go to a second round of investment. He is doing an excellent job of doubling each year. We're really, really proud of what he's doing. It's a global business now, and it's operated out of St. Petersburg, Florida. Kurt is quite a master at marketing sophisticated software across the country without having to get on an airplane.
What kind of software do they market?
It's HIPAA compliance over top of all the databases in hospital, by way of example. security.
You're also involved in a company called Bayshore Solutions, am I right?
Bayshore Solutions with our friends at the Outback. They're the primary investors. With Kevin Horrigan is the CEO and has done a fabulous job of running that business. That business is doing better and better, and one of the significant movers in our community.
What's the niche that they occupy?
They're an internet marketing company. You know, it's not just building websites. It's how do you apply the marketing elements of the internet to your business, all the way from social media up to the point of sale, website optimization. They've got it down. They're really doing a nice job, and they've picked some niches up in like yachting and cars. So across the country, he's picking up all kinds of major assignments because he improves the sales that are measurable.
You're also involved in banking now, am I right?
Banking, I was actually involved in banking with Herb Brown, Mel Semler back in the 70s, and was out of it for a number of years except as an investor. And then I was approached by Don Adam, who is an entrepreneur and quite an executive. He's been very generous to our community here at Moffitt by way of example. And Don brought a group of directors together, and they include Senator Connie Mack, Judy Genschaft, Mel Semler, Ambassador Semler, and others. And frankly, this has turned out to be a very impressive run. We started in 2006, I'm going to get my centuries right, and here we are over $1 billion today and growing in a very nice way and safe way. And we're out looking for loans. We're actually, you know, one of those banks that has money to lend, and so we're trying to build our relationships faster in this market.
For years, you've been very involved in economic development and in the community, both on the statewide level and the local level. You've been on chambers, you've been on Council of 100 regional partnership organizations. What drives you to get engaged in these things, and what role do you see yourself playing in these organizations?
Well, I've played out a lot of the roles, you know, from the chamber presidents to the Tampa Bay Partnership chairman and so forth. I found that the economic development world is always in need of people to come together to talk about how do we move the ball in our economy. And Tampa Bay Partnership's a great example of that. University of South Florida is a huge economic engine. I think it's the place where business has to come together to bring our region together, not just our individual practices or our counties or our cities. We have to operate as a region. The regions are the countries of the future.
For 10 years, until very recently, you were a trustee at your alma mater, University of South Florida. What's your perspective on higher education and where things are here in the state of Florida in higher ed?
Well, it was an honor to be a trustee for 10 years. As one of the founding trustees, we were a bit of tabula blanca, you know, make a strategy and try to come up with how do you grow this institution. And we started with about $600 million in revenues and expenses, if you will. That was the budget, and now it's $1.7 billion budget and growing. It soon will be $2 billion. It's a huge enterprise. It was a great honor to work there as a trustee and to serve as a trustee. The future of higher education is probably the biggest job generator factor we have. If we could get politics out of higher education and streamline our delivery platforms so that we don't have our universities competing with each other, and we use our capital to create more degrees and retain those students. I want to give everyone an orange card so that the foreign students can stay here, not a green card, but an orange card, stay in Florida and do your engineering here. Wouldn't that be an exciting way to grow our job market? I think we need to bring our universities in concert with each other and not competitive. That's the one thing that would help a lot into the future. We have wonderful universities. We have wonderful programs, professors, students, but we could do a better job.
In your business, when you look for talent, what characteristics do you typically look for?
The ability to learn, get along attitude, a track record of success. You know, if they can show that they consistently are winners, that helps. Today, the education is constantly flowing. Have they continued to grow no matter what their age? And you put that together and a little bit of background in our industry, we can, with our platform, help you make a very fine living.
As you look out over your industry and if you look out over our regional economy, what challenges and opportunities do you see on the horizon?
I think the challenge continues to be the inability of the region to work together, seamless presentation of its goals, both in Tallahassee and in Washington. We need to work together. I'm not running for any political role, but we need to work together in this region in a way that is seamless and not, St. Petersburg or Hillsborough County or Tampa. We are Tampa Bay, and we need to work in that sense. So that's the opportunity, is to come together.
Well, Lee, I'd like to thank you for being our guest today.
Thank you for having me. I'm honored.
If you'd like to see this interview or any of the other CEO profiles in our Suncoast Business Forum archive, you can find them at the web at wedu.org/SBF. Thanks for joining us for the Suncoast Business Forum.